Korea, the demilitarized zone, a strip of land 4 kilometers wide, which cuts the country in two. Loudspeakers wage a propaganda war from both sides. Here, 500,000 soldiers, North Korean, South Korean...
The audio you're hearing comes from a 6-hour television docuseries called Korea, The Unknown War. It originally aired first in Britain in 1988, and then 2 years later in America. On the whole, it offers a decently comprehensive look at a war that has largely slipped from the minds of Western audiences. It covers everything from the ousting of Japanese imperial forces, to the drawing of the 38th parallel, to the extreme violence of the Jeju Uprising. It traces the path of U.S. and UN involvement in the war, as well as the intervention of Chinese troops, and the brutal and extensive American-led aerial bombing campaign, which turned nearly the entire country of North Korea to a pile of rubble and ash. In a 1988 interview, Curtis LeMay, then the commander of the United States Strategic Air Command, estimated that 20% of North Korea's population had been killed over the course of 3 years through a combination of bombing campaigns, starvation, and exposure. If you're really looking for a deep dive into the Korean War, then I can't recommend enough that you check out Season 3 of the Blowback podcast, hosted by Brendan James and Noah Colwyn. But anyway, I digress. In the final minutes of the 6th hour of the television docuseries, the timeline jumps into the 1980s to talk about the enduring consequences of a war fought decades earlier. Here's another clip.
For millions of Koreans, the forced separations of 40 years ago remain an open wound. They long for kin on the other side of the ceasefire line. Southern families still search for relatives lost in the South. Television has helped reunite them.
What you're hearing are family members, long ago displaced and separated, being reunited through a special live broadcast telethon called Finding Dispersed Families. Put on by the Korean broadcast station in 1983, the program was originally scheduled to run for about an hour and a half. However, it ended up being so popular that it ran for over 453 hours across 138 days. As a result, around 10,000 families who had been separated during the Korean War were reunited. This week's episode picks up with a movie that tells the story of one of those families, or at least a fictionalized version. Today, we're talking about the 1986 film Gilsotteum. I'm your host, Matt Jones, and this is another episode of I'm Not Crying. Hi, today I'm here with Ryan Estrada. How you doing, Ryan?
I am doing great.
Great. And where are you recording from?
I am recording from Busan, South Korea. If you guys have seen Black Panther, the scene where he's jumping around on the bridge, that's right outside this window.
Whoa, excellent. Okay. And you said it's pretty early there right now.
Yep, 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Okay. And you're
good time
you're
to
okay.
cry.
Good time to cry. Sure. Yeah. A morning cry. Have you had morning cries before?
Not that I recall. Let's get one going though.
Let's get one going. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had an early morning cry, probably because my consciousness isn't properly assembled maybe to feel much more beyond being tired.
Yeah, well, I've always been weird about crying because the way my mind works, because I'm a cartoonist and a storyteller, like every time something horrible happens to me, my immediate thought is, oh man, I'm going to make a comic book about this. Instead of crying, I just start taking notes and getting really excited about it.
Yeah, I can relate to that, right? You think about how could this maybe turn into art.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've had so many horrible situations happen to me that I got so excited about in the moment.
Really? So do you want to tell our listeners a bit about your comic book and storytelling background?
Yeah, well, I am a graphic novelist. I make comic books inspired by the places I travel. For a while, I moved to a new country every 10 years, and I did zero research. So a lot of times, I might be thrown from a moving train by the police. I might be nearly eaten by lions in the Masai Mara. I might have to sleep on a park bench in a typhoon, and lot of things happen to me that I was very excited about, make comics about. But uh, most of my comics are either inspired by things that happened to me or inspired by people that I met. The biggest series that I'm known for right now is the Banned Book Club series, which is Banned Book Club, Good Old Fashioned Korean Spirit, and No Rules Tonight, which are inspired by my wife's experiences being hunted down by the cops in the 1980s for reading banned books under a dictator. And so yeah, I try to make that a tearjerker because it's about teenagers being tortured by police for reading books. Hopefully they're still funny and cute, but yeah.
Sure.
I've lived in Korea now on and off since 2002, and I make a lot of stories inspired by. I work with my wife to tell stories about her experiences here, and yeah, and I end up going to the Busan International Film Festival a lot, which is where I first saw the movie we're going to talk about today.
Oh, that's really cool. So, what first brought you to Korea in 2002?
Yeah, I graduated from animation school the year that the entire animation industry got laid off. And so there were no jobs, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And then at like complaining to a friend about it, like 3 a.m. on Instant Messenger. This is back when we had AOL Instant Messenger. And she's like, "Oh, well, have you heard about this thing in Korea where they're so desperate for teachers right now? They'll buy you a plane ticket and an apartment and pay you to speak English to kids that already know it." And I'm like, no, but I'm going to do it. So I flew out here and I realized, hey, I can just travel the world and make comics, go wherever I want. So I just kept doing that.
That's an incredible lifestyle to have.
And fun.
Where else have you been in your travels?
I lived in India. I've been homeless in Japan. I lived in Costa Rica on a uh, vol- Costa Rican jungle and a Panamanian volcano. I lived in India and acted in Bollywood films. I
Oh
climbed
wow,
Kenya and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. I went all over the world.
are you still traveling as much these days?
Not so much. We've kind of settled. My wife and I have kind of settled down here in Busan, and just spend all day making comics.
I was going to say, now it sounds like you've got the well of experience built up, and then you can spend a
Yeah,
lot of time translating that into comics.
yeah. I'm way behind on comics about my own experiences.
I can imagine. Um, well, yeah, I was excited. So you mentioned the first time you saw the movie that we're going to discuss, you saw it at the Busan International Film Festival.
Yeah, that's the largest film festival in Asia. It happens right across the street from our house, so I'm always there. I'm always crashing all the parties. I'm going, always seeing all the stuff, and I got to see this movie in a way that no one else will be able to. The main reason that I'm crying is because I had a very unique experience that we'll probably get into later, with everyone involved in the film being there and something surprising happening, and and yeah, so it's always kind of stuck with me. And like, so when we're giving ratings, there'll be very different ratings for like the way I saw it, the way I resaw it, and the way I saw it after I learned some of the things about the making of the film that were
Ah,
awful in reality.
okay. Well, yeah. Now I'm really intrigued. So what is the movie that we're talking about today?
We are talking about Gilsotteum, which is a 1986 film by director Im Kwan Tak. It is based on real experiences. So in the 1980s, there was this TV show that was reuniting families because during the Korean War, a lot of families were just torn apart. Some people were uh, basically like at the end of the Korean War, whoever happened to be standing above a certain line. Now you're North Korean. Whoever's below a certain line, now you're South Korean. Some people have still never been reunited because of that. But some people just, people were lost from their families as babies. People were split up and sent to other sides of the country. They had no way of communicating. And so entire families just didn't know where each other were. And they had a TV show where it's suddenly I've started seeing them on TikTok and like it's Instagram. There's people have started posting like tearful clips
Oh,
about
sure.
this show, where they go on and describe like, hey, here's where I live, this is the kind of the, sometimes they were babies, so they'd be like, I all I remember is I lived by a river, and my mom had her hair looked like this, and I smelled cookies, so we lived near a cookie factory. And then like people would call in and like try and describe facts and figure out if they were related and meet up. And so this was a huge cultural thing when this movie was made, and everybody was watching every week and crying. And then they made this movie that's like, what if the people couldn't cry? What if uh, people had been through so much because of this that their dreams come true, they meet up, and they don't really like each other?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It does pose that really interesting question, and I like that you're mentioning Crying Now, because it is a movie that opens with a family sitting around watching this like reunion telethon, like getting tearful, um,
Yeah.
except for the mom.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like the biggest show on television at that time. Everybody tuned in. Everybody was like in line outside trying to find their family. And yeah, it's like even still, like when those show up on Instagram, I'm like, it's you get a little teary watching it. Like these families that have, because it had been like 40 years for this family that they'd seen each other, um, and uh, and yeah, it starts off with like everybody watching and crying.
yeah, yeah, it does. And I will say, like, as far as film openings go, I was completely locked in that first 5 or 10 minute scene to where all we're doing as viewers is also watching the telethon.
Mm-hmm.
Like curiosity peaked by like a massive scale in terms of trying to since I'm not familiar, trying to figure out like what is going on. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I like that they show you that first, and then you meet the people that we're going to follow, and kind of get their backstory through flashbacks of why they're separated and what their lives are like now.
yeah, yeah. And so um could you take me back to that the first time that you saw this? Like what year was it? What was going on in your life? How'd you find your way to the film festival?
I think it's probably about 2016, 2017. I think it was uh I believe it was the 40-year anniversary of this film's release. And so the entire cast and crew were there. And at that time, I was working on our book band book club, which takes place in the 80s. So I decided, oh, I definitely want to go see on the big screen a movie made in the 80s so I can kind of get the feel of the time and everything. So that's why I chose that particular movie. I usually kind of avoid the thing. Well, the thing is, at the Busan Film Festival, there are a lot of really great Q&As, but sometimes they have a translator and sometimes they don't. So I don't
Mm.
really use that to decide if I'm going to see a movie or not. If it's like an all Korean cast, they might not have the translation. So I just it just so happened I was going to see that, and I'd actually seen the director a few days earlier. Director Im Kwon Tak, he was kind of a big guest of the festival, and they had him plant a tree in the park across the street, and that was also really sad because I think they asked him to agree to plant a tree before they realized his condition. And he was basically, they had four people holding him up and operating him like a puppet to get him to dig a hole because he
Oh
couldn't.
wow.
I don't think he knew that he was there. And
Oh
there's
my.
literally one person on each arm to make it look like he's digging a hole. And it was I mean, he was smiling, he was happy, but he could not move a single part of his body. um
And did the
but there was a big
tree,
ceremony for him.
did it get planted?
It got planted. They
Okay.
operated him literally like a puppet to plant that tree,
Okay,
and
they
then got him back in
operated
his
him well.
wheelchair.
Okay.
Um, and and that kind of teared me up because I felt bad for him until I learned more things about what he did in the making of this film, and now I don't. So he can go to hell. Um, but then I went to see this movie, and I watch it, and again, it's a tearful movie, but it's a kind of tearful that, like, again, it's about people who can't cry. And I uh I'm trying to think of how much I want to get into, but okay, I'll skip that bit for now. But so I watch it, and I'm feeling a little misty. It's very sad at the end, and then the three main actors come out: the mom, the dad, and the son. I think it's Shin Song Il, Kim Ji Mi, and Jung Suk Kim. And they are there because it's the 40th anniversary. And another thing that, again, I don't think that the uh, people who organized the festival knew, that not only were they reuniting for the 40th anniversary, this was the first time they'd seen each other in 40 years. This was their
Wow.
reunion. So this movie is about them reuniting after 40 years, and then the main actors reunite 40 years after they've made the film. And like I said, this film is all about people who can't show their emotions and can't cry. And then all of a sudden, these three actors come out and start hugging and crying.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of, as they do in the Q&A, and there was translation, they talked about how I mean, they didn't really say that the production of the film was a little traumatic, but learning more later, I believe it kind of was. And so what they talked about is that, like, they all admitted that they felt like family when they were making that film. But then after they split up, like, the actor who played the son was talking about, like, look, you guys are really famous, I wasn't as famous, like, I felt weird, like, calling you up, like, I'm just an actor you worked with on one movie. And then, like, one of the actresses, like, got an offer in Hollywood and went to America for a little bit and lost touch. And they just, every single one of them felt like, no one else got in touch. Like, I don't want to be the one to reach out and act like, if no one else felt this. And all of a sudden they all admitted that they became a family on that set, and they were hugging and crying for like 20 minutes.
That's
And
incredible.
all of the emotion, everyone in the audience watching the movie had that, like, same built up emotion that we had, that the characters had. And then when we got to see, we literally saw the sequel happen in real life, and it wasn't filmed, and no one else will ever see it. And we all were just bawling in our
Whoa.
seats.
So
Um, so that's
multi-layered,
how I
yeah,
saw it. Yeah,
a lot of reunification happening on the
yeah,
screen and then in real life.
yeah. And it was literally like watching a sequel to the film immediately after it ends.
It's funny how that happens, that idea that you have people that you're connected with, and over time you can convince yourself that if they're not reaching out, then maybe you shouldn't reach out,
Hmm.
and then that drift just kind of occurs.
Yeah, I've definitely had, because I mentioned that I moved to a new country every year for a decade, and now I live in another country from where I grew up. So I have people in my life that, like, um, I consider my best friends, and then I'm suddenly I realize, like, oh, I haven't talked to them in like 20 years. Like, I didn't even think about the fact that like, I read their social media posts, so I, like, they're still present in my mind. And then I go to, like, I think of them and I go to message them, I'm like, oh, our last message was 20 years ago, and it was happy birthday, happy birthday. And the
Oh,
20
wow.
messages before that were happy birthday. And okay. So yeah, there's a lot of people that then I'm like, is it weird to reach out now? Like, do they remember who I am? And so yeah, I've had that feeling.
I can relate. Yeah, I think not to the extent like you've moved around internationally a lot, and I've moved different states a lot. So then I find that, yeah, it's just really easy to become disconnected, and I
Hmm.
have to make like a really really conscious effort to reach out and like try and stay in conversation with people.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, just as I was getting up to log onto the Zoom, I had a message from a friend I haven't talked to in like 20 something years. So
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully a good one.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Kinda
So then
catching
you
up.
said you got a little misty eyed during the
Mhm.
the watching of this toward the end.
Yeah, I mean, I watching this movie again reminds me of, there's a quote that I swear is from Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad, that when I Google it, there's no reference to him ever having said this, but I'm pretty sure he said it on, like, one of the Making of Better Call Saul or Making of Breaking Bad podcasts, when he talked about it's much more powerful to watch someone not cry. When someone else, because when you're watching a movie with someone crying, you're like, job done. They're handling it. They're crying. Um, it, you're watching someone have be sad, but when someone is, like, holding it in and trying not to cry, then you're like, someone's got to cry. I guess I'll do it. And
Right, right. I guess I'll carry the load.
yeah,
Yeah.
it feels more sad because they're not getting the relief of crying. crying is like what heals us from feeling sad. But like it when they can't, whether they're trying to be strong for someone else or whether they can't admit their emotions, like it makes us cry. So yeah, watching these characters that like they've been through a lot, and that this is a movie where everything is like shown visually, because they're not telling us what's going on in people's minds. These are people that are silent and talking about things other than what's wrong, what other than what's bothering
Mm.
them. No one speaks out loud what's wrong. Like, how can they say, oh, I've been waiting 40 years to meet these two people and they kind of suck now. Like, I don't like any of them. Like, they're not going to say that out loud, but you can feel that emotion um, welling up inside of them. And so it kind of, it makes you feel a little sad.
I gotta say, I agree with what you said right there about how it's people seeing people try and fight back emotion is kind of what tips me as well.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily actors crying on screen that does it,
Hmm.
and I think that there's something to that.
Yeah. Just to say now, I think the one thing we should acknowledge is something I didn't realize until after we agreed to talk about this film, is that reading more about it in research for this. So there's a scene where we do the flashback to their lives and when they split up, and there's the moment that they kind of they're very young, and the mom gets pregnant, and there's the scene where they make love in the barn. That when I'm watching that, I'm like, that girl looks really young, but
Oh yeah,
people in Korea look very young. I assume she's probably 30 playing a child. Found out in my research just now that was a 13-year-old child that was forced by the director to do that scene against her will. And when she said no, he told her that he would sue her family and make her pay for the entire film if she didn't get naked on camera. Now, nothing is shown on camera, um, but she was forced to be naked on set and enact this lovemaking scene. And then there is her, you see her naked back where she was not covered at all to the other people on set. And so that's an also very sad part, that uh you know a child was harmed during the production of this film,
yeah,
that I didn't
yeah.
know until rewatching it now.
Okay, I can
Uh
see it. I can absolutely see how that shifts your feelings. I know what scene you're talking about, and
yeah.
I was thinking, yes, they are extraordinarily young, and that was a bit of an odd scene to see the way that they framed it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in Kwon Tak, the director, is a jerk, and I no longer feel bad about him having to be operated like a puppet, because he treats people like puppets
Oh,
when making his films.
and does he have is his reputation that he's a pretty major director, Korean director?
Yeah, I mean, the when I saw him there, it was because he was kind of being honored for his history of film. Yeah, he was kind of a very big director in the classic days. Um, but yeah, they were like handing out books about his legacy and everything. I was given one, but it was all in Korean, so I couldn't read it. But yeah, just
And he
just really,
threatened to sue the actor, the child actor, and her
yeah,
family.
she was told she would be doing something different that day. Like, he lied to her about what they were shooting that day. And then she was there without her parents, and he told her to get naked, and she's like, "No, not getting naked." And he said, "Well, this role involves you getting naked, so if you don't do that, we're gonna have to reshoot everything, and your family's gonna have to pay for it." And she like started crying, and then and did it, and that's really, really messed up.
Oh wow, that is extremely messed up.
Hmm.
And this something that came to light like more recently?
Yeah, I think the actress now as an adult kind of gave an interview talking about it. I'm not sure when. I just hadn't happened to come across that information until, like, I might not have chosen the film if I had known that before I did that. But the film still is very powerful. That's a extra very sad layer of what happened during one shooting one of the
Yeah.
scenes.
Yeah, that is an extra sad layer. And I was thinking when you mentioned this film, obviously it's one I never heard of. I read that it wasn't, I guess it didn't really perform much
Mhm.
outside of Korea, and I hadn't heard of it. And I was glad that you said that there was a full free version on YouTube with
Mhm.
subtitles. Obviously, very helpful. But yeah, the story itself was one of those things that I was only tangentially familiar with because, I think like the Korean War is often framed in America as like the forgotten war, the unknown
Mhm.
war. So there's very little context or understanding about like what it entailed with American audiences. So it was one of those things where, yeah, as soon as the movie started and they had this telethon running on the TV screen,
Mhm.
um, I was very, very intrigued, and it was one of those movies that I found myself researching a bunch then afterward.
Mhm. Yeah, the Korean War is interesting because technically it's still going. It was never officially ended. Um, it just kind of like America and Russia decided we're gonna, just to quit fighting. We're gonna draw this line. This is North Korea. This is South Korea. Just nobody ever crossed this line. And
Yeah.
now technically the two countries are still at war, but they just kind of ignore each other now. And like North Korea, whenever you see on America, North Korea is making threats to bomb someone, everyone in Korea is like, yeah, whatever. They just say that stuff for their own political reasons. We
Oh,
don't.
sure.
But people in Korea just don't talk about them. But it is this like this very important thing in history that still affects everything that happens. And the two countries have gone in completely different directions. And South Korea, I think, is now one of the safest places you can go in the world. Like I absolutely love living here, but this history is still kind of, like I said, there's still families that can't reunite because one of the family members happened to be standing above that line and one happened to be standing below that line, and now they can never meet again because they're North Koreans can't leave and South Koreans can't go to North Korea.
Yeah, yeah, I had read that yeah, that all of the reunifications that resulted from that Korean broadcasting station telethon, they were all for South Koreans living in South Korea,
Yeah.
and like only later did they offer some sort of like visitation rights to where if you did have family in North Korea, you could go see them, but you couldn't like stay there or relocate.
Yeah, there was like a place at the border where people would like meet in a big room and like you could talk to them for a few minutes. Kind of like it was kind of like seeing photos of it. It's kind of like watching someone visit someone in prison.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Um, so if you had to, I one of the things that I'm interested in that I talk a lot about in this podcast is trying to quantify like crying reactions. So I'm curious, the first time that you saw this in 2016, how would you rate your crying reaction on the Baden-Hop-Fletcher lacrimation scale?
Um, yeah, I sorry, I had this in my notes that I couldn't find at 7. It goes 1 to 10,
1 to 5. Yeah.
1 to 5,
Yep.
with 5 being the most
Oh yeah.
tearful.
Yeah. 5 is the big one.
I would say probably watching the movie I was at about a 3, and then when the actual 3 people were falling and blubbering on the floor in front of me, I think I probably got up to a 4 or 5.
Oh wow. So like upheaval, obliteration. You were really just in it.
Yeah, because like I don't cry often, but like
Okay.
when but at that 1-2 punch, like if I had, if I'd seen a movie where people can't cry, I'm gonna get a little teary eyed. If I see 3 people crying, I'm gonna get a little teary eyed. But like when you have an entire movie where we can't cry and you're never gonna get the satisfaction of seeing us cry, and you accept that, and you start crying a little bit, and then all of a sudden they like burst out of the screen like you're watching Last Action Hero, and the real people start crying harder than you've ever seen anyone cry in your life, like all of a sudden, like you can't help it. It just fly. It all just comes out, and the
Yeah,
entire audience was like that.
that's pretty profound the way that, yeah, I think you being able to experience that 40th anniversary showing and
Hmm.
witness that, like that second layer of the movie in real life is very cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it was a I wish, like whenever I recommend that people watch this film, it's like you're not gonna have the same experience. No one ever can that I had. But yeah, I am glad that it's free on YouTube because it's not like a shady upload. Like the Korean government like paid to restore this thing and make it available because they have a channel where they show like historically important films and make them as widely available as they can with subtitles in every language. And so the Korean government wants to share this with people. But yeah, it's a very powerful film. Do know the thing that I said about the director's treatment of actors. If you want to, if that makes you not want to watch it. I'm pretty sure he is gone now, so he is not going to be rewarded if you watch it.
And just a quick note here, the director Im Kwon-taek is in fact still alive. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but but yeah, it's a powerfully made film by a very unkind man about emotion.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm wondering, to go back to what you just said. So I'm curious about your relationship with crying. You said that you're not a big crier.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I uh, I think I always think about stories. So like all these times that things have happened to me, I just get really excited about it. You know, if things happen to other people, uh, I feel bad, but I'm really not a crier. I think like for me, whenever I've cried, it's always been because of movies. Like when I was all the way up to like through college, like I couldn't watch Lion King without crying when Mufasa died. I think that
Mm.
like maybe the bad remake has cured me of that because now I just think about that horrible thing. Um, or I for some reason I always used to cry at the end of Spider-Man when Peter Parker said that's all I have to give. I used to cry at that.
Oh, okay.
There's certain movies that would just tear me up, but life experiences would always get me very thoughtful and philosophical instead of tearful. Um, and yeah, I've been lucky that I haven't had to witness a lot of other people in my life experiencing trauma. All the trauma has been on me, and so I'm allowed to be excited about it.
Oh, sure, sure. I think that's fair then. Yeah, if it's your trauma, then you can feel however you want
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
So then when you're having something like, would you say that instead of crying, because sometimes I guess the more episodes I've done, I find that yeah, like crying is a response that some people go to or are more apt to go to, while others process their feelings in different ways. Do you think that turning your experience or potential cries into art is one of those ways of processing?
Yeah, I mean, art is how we can um, kind of take apart what is making us feel bad in so many different ways and explore it and like either try and figure out what we feel by making nonfiction or like fix the situation what we wish had happened or something like that to take it in another direction. There's so many ways to explore our emotions through art, and like I said, I've been doing this so long that like I don't even like get sad at things anymore because I'm excited about exploring them. But yeah, I mean, I think if you think about like what is the story I'm going to tell about this, not everyone makes art, but like you know, when you have conversations, what are you going to learn from this? Like it, you know, and I don't think crying is something you should try to avoid. Like I like crying. Crying is fun. Like sometimes I'll just go on YouTube and search like um sad videos and like if I watch a video of someone getting a big check on a talk show or or like something like that and I'll cry just for fun,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
don't get to do I know because I don't get to do that in my life because I'm a weird person that enjoys trauma.
No,
um
no. I can relate to the thing about, I think, primarily crying from media or art that
mhm,
you experience. I can understand that. Um,
mhm,
and I think it's interesting because we're talking about a movie that it came out in 1986, and obviously is art made about something that occurred a few years before in 1983. So a way of processing like this huge fractured national grief.
mhm. Yeah,
Um,
and I think this movie kind of probably meant a lot to people at that time because people were going through a lot of emotions, and there was this big show where people were having reunions, but other people couldn't have that catharsis. Either like the people they wanted to meet maybe had died in the war and they couldn't reunite with them, or like the situation in the movie was that the the couple were now married to other people, and in the movie, um, the woman's husband was very encouraging, like, hey, why don't you go meet him, it'll mean a lot to you. Like I think that's another thing that makes the movie interesting, that it wasn't like she was doing it in secret. Her husband's like, yeah, cool, go meet your old boyfriend that you had a kid with, like that you've been pining
yeah,
over for your entire life, like sure, why not. And so she doesn't have that excuse of like why she can't connect, and it's just impossible because she's lost the connection with her husband, and the son sucks now, and it's like she understands why he sucks now, because like he went through a lot of trauma that is, even though it's not her fault because she didn't create the situation, she's responsible for and feels responsible for, but it turned him into a really crappy person that she
Yeah,
doesn't really
yeah,
want to hang out with. And like, what do you do in that circumstance? Like, you know, it is because of her decisions and actions during a difficult situation where she didn't have many choices, that he's gotten into the situation and been raised in such a way that he's become a hateful, terrible person that only wants her money and only like treats his own girlfriend like an object, um, and is just like, and hates her. And she can't blame him, but she also like, I ain't gonna hang around and like be best friends with him. I'm not gonna like be his
yeah.
mommy. Like, I'm just gonna pretend that these results mean nothing and leave because I don't want to hang out with these people. And everybody's like, and every single character makes that decision like, yeah, I don't like any of you.
I know it is. It's not a very hopeful reunion for them. I think, especially when you get to see her hear the essentially the DNA or the blood test work of the time, and refute that and just say, I don't accept that. I still think if you're not 100% sure, then he's not my son.
Yeah.
And then they get that really interesting um, speech from the guy providing the blood work analysis, who tells them that, well, we're all the same blood of the same nation that's been like fractured by
Hmm.
this war, like this proxy war fought between the US and the Soviet Union. So actually, like, we all are family.
Yeah. And I think even in his mind, he's just like, well, obviously he's your kid. You're,
Yeah.
but me explaining that obviously isn't helping. So I'll just like that doesn't make sense. Like, even if he's not your kid, just pretend he is. We're all sad. Like, but he's just
Yeah.
like, if this helps your brain wrap around this, like, lady, this is your kid. Like, but she's just like, yeah, but he sucks though. Have you met him?
I know she's really not into it. I think the father is trying to grapple with it, or
Yeah.
he's definitely like, oh, I'm going to include him in the family registry.
Hmm.
But he also seems extraordinarily broken because you find out that he ended up also in a way out of circumstance, not necessarily choosing the life he wanted. Um, he ends up essentially, right. It's a farm of a farmer takes him in
Yeah.
when he after he's been like running from the army, and the farmer has a blind daughter. So when the farmer dies, he kind of like begs him to take care of his daughter, and that's what he
Yeah.
ends up building his life around.
Yeah. So he's with someone he doesn't necessarily love, but has responsibility, and but is always, you know, his entire life has been out trying to get back to this family that he lost. And so yeah, he's like all gung ho, like, hey, let's all like, you know, be a family, and I add him to the registry. And then his wife's like, no, why would you do that? Like, you have a family here. And but
Yeah.
he's still ready to do it until he finds out that, the mom doesn't want anything to do with any of them. And then the son's you know, still trying to make that connection with him, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, I gotta go. And so they all separately decide that they're not, like, every single person has a different reason. Like, the mom is the one, like, her family's fine. Her husband seems great. He's a nice
Yeah.
boy. I like him.
Yeah.
Like, she's not like, she's just like, hey, look, I have a life I like. I don't like any of you people anymore. I'm out. And the husband's like, I don't like my life, but if you're out, like, there's nothing for me here. This is going to bring nothing but pain to my life. Like, I'm not going to leave my wife and go hang out with this terrible son that we have. So I guess I got to go back to the life um, that I appreciate, but am not necessarily all in on, rather than like be heartbroken by the sadness. And the son's like, whatever, I don't like y'all anyway. You weren't going to give me any money, so screw you.
Yeah. Yeah. It frames it as like a really, really high risk situation to reach out and like reunify with family, but family being is someone that you either have never met or that you have real no memory of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And you understand everyone's choice.
yeah, you do. Yeah, I totally get it at the end. I was actually going to ask, what's your read on the end when um she leaves the clinic And then she's driving alone, and she ends up kind of running her car across a lane of traffic and stopping before then just continuing on her way.
I think that's that moment of like the emotion almost gets to her and she decides not to not let it. Like it's that thing of like seeing a character not cry. Like you're waiting for like when is she gonna have the most emotional breakdown? She's like, no, not gonna do that. I'm gonna pretend this never happened.
Yeah, I guess that was my reading of it too, where she almost has a moment where she says, "Okay, I'll return and I'll go through with this," but then she decides actually push through it. I have a life already.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really interesting. Like how the movie does like through this like flashbacks, and you're seeing like where they've lost a child, and they're searching for the child, and like you really want them to have this reunion with the child, and when you meet him, within seconds you're like, oh, this guy sucks. I don't like him. Like, he's
Yeah,
just such a bad guy and so like cruel to the people around him and so like greedy and just like but again, you understand every for me, I understand every emotion every character goes through, even if they don't show it. Like I understand why he's like that. Like he's been abandoned. He has been through such horrible situations that like he has to be that guarded. He has to be that selfish because he's everything in his life he's had to get himself and hasn't been able to trust or rely on anyone else because he lost both his parents before he could remember. He knows they're out there, but they just hadn't come back to him,
yeah,
and he had to deal with like con men and danger and like being passed around from person to person, and so it makes perfect sense that he is the way he is, and that a family reunion is not going to fix that. It's not going to fix that trauma. But it's like, what can any of these characters do about this? Like, he sucks now. Like, just
yeah.
what are we gonna do?
I know in a way it's I know it's very simplistic, but it's like the damage is done. And what I really liked about the movie is that I think it does a really good job of demonstrating like the ripple effects of a war that you know, ostensibly ended in the sense of okay, there was like an armistice, but in many ways, you're right, it's still very much like a Cold War ongoing.
Yeah,
But that even decades later, you get to experience like all of the various traumas of people still surviving and separated by it across generations, who really haven't recovered from it. I just think, yeah.
yeah.
So I think the movie for me did a really nice job of showing like how that ripple effect continues on into the modern day.
Yeah, and I've been talking a lot about the son, but also the relationship between the mother and father is also fractured just because of how into it each of them. Like she's searching for closure, he's searching for his getting his girl back.
Yeah.
Like he's more into like she's moved on. She has a great family. She has a really cool husband. She has kids. Like she's happy, and he is in like a situation he's kind of like felt forced into out of obligation and wants and is in his mind he's still on the same search and
Mm.
he so like that unrequited love of like they're both going to into this for different reasons and he never says that but like in the way he's acting and the questions he's asking and the things he's saying about his family it's clear that he is still in that moment that he was in 40 years earlier when he was looking for her and she's like I wonder whatever happened to that guy, it would be nice to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate it. And I think sometimes this is because I'm like, when I'm watching a movie, I'm primed to imagine or respond to what I would consider like the American way of making it, to where there's going to be
Mhm.
like a romantic tryst element thrown into the plot
Yeah,
and a level of secrecy. And I love that none of that bears out in this.
yeah, yeah, like her like we said her husband is like yeah, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, maybe get on this TV show. Great. And then
Yeah.
cuz he just likes the show. Um and then yeah, and then he doesn't tell his wife, but she knows that he's been searching for this woman and then they have a conversation about it. So it's there's no hidden secrecy. But I love when movies don't like all the things we're saying about the relationships, no one ever says any of this. We can all
Yeah.
everyone is there's a lot of silence in this film. There's a lot of looks, but we can it's made well enough that we can read what everyone's motivations are, what everyone's emotions are, what everyone's connections to this situation are. and that's always a lot more powerful. Instead of being told what people's emotions are, if the film makes us feel them ourselves and we are the ones that figure them out, we're more connected to those emotions.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's definitely a film like really filled with silences.
Hmm.
Right. It's there's not many of the characters are very blunt with how they're feeling in any particular moment, but you can definitely discern where they're coming from.
Yeah, it was reminding me when you were just talking about the like I had a similar situation where in the writing of band book club, this is about things my wife had been through 40 years earlier in the 1980s, and like um when she was telling me the story about like, she joined an illegal banned book club because of a cute boy, and like uh she didn't know it, and then she found out she was in a banned book club, and they had a relationship, and then she's telling me this story about everything they went through, and then she talked about like, and then last night we reunited, and I'm just so enthralled in the story. I'm hearing it as a story, and she talked to, and then we reunited last night, and I'm like, oh, did you kiss? And she's like, no, we're married. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that part. I was so into the story. So I get her husband in this movie.
Sure, sure. You're right though. To have that expectation, I think of just being exposed to so many of the same narratives over and over
Yeah,
again, and
that's just
constantly
what
thinking,
happens. Yeah.
it is. I watch so many movies and TV shows where if there's two people in a room together, I think, when do they kiss?
Yeah.
And that is just sometimes simply not a part of the story at all. Like, isn't
Hmm.
happening. But I can't
Yeah,
help it.
I wonder if I had seen this movie without the reunion afterward, like I wonder if it would have felt unsatisfying, because at the end nothing happens. Like all the things you're waiting for to happen, none of that happened. That's the point of the film. But like I
Yeah.
wonder if it would have felt unsatisfying if I hadn't seen the satisfying Hollywood ending happen in real life. Um,
That's a good point. Yeah, in some ways you did get the Hollywood ending
yeah, I
with the
did.
real life reunification of the cast.
Hmm.
Um, it makes me think about with something like the reunion telethon that they're watching, which to me, I guess I read the director, he pulled real footage from it.
Yeah,
So it's almost like to me it's the 80s and it feels like you're watching like it looks like a Jerry Springer talk show to where they've got a split screen and people are crying and they're describing who they are. Um to me, I guess the modern equivalent of that feels like when I would see videos. I don't know if they're still popular now, but I would see videos of soldiers returning home from war to like
yeah.
surprise their kids or their dog. Um, which also that feels like it falls into that category of being very emotional.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and like that's kind of why those films have. I don't know if it's just my algorithm because I'm in Korea. I don't know if those are showing up anybody else's, but I'm seeing them a lot. Like those Korean reunion videos showing up on TikTok right alongside the dogs meeting soldiers and all that. And
Ah,
it like I think there's a few accounts that are just posting clips, and some of them post the same clips that were reused in this movie. um I've seen some of those pop up and see the extended editions, and it's funny how that when you watch the beginning, probably when it was shown originally it wasn't as obvious, but now that it's been like cleaned up and restored, it's very obvious when she's like, you see a character walking in front of like a green screen of like footage from the actual
oh,
show.
sure, sure.
um or like or like when you see her like look and you cut to footage from the show and it's a completely different type of camera, completely different, like shot on videotape, and like you cut back to her film reacting to it. Like this is all real families reuniting that she's
Yeah,
walking through here. um
yeah. It had
yeah
me
so that,
going to YouTube to look up like the real 1983 footage of the
yeah.
show, and not all of that was subtitled, but I can obviously see the emotion that's happening.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that experience of like, since I know, and what's interesting about you talking about moving a lot of countries, I know I said that I can relate since I've moved around quite a bit too. Is have you ever had that same experience of reunification of not seeing someone for a long time and then having emotion upon reconnecting?
Yeah, I mean, I've had trips where like I went back and didn't tell my mom I was coming, and like kind of surprised her at a family event, and like, I got to see I mean, my mom's not gonna like hide her emotions like the characters in this film. So yeah, I've gotten to have plenty of reunions and see people I haven't seen in a while. Um, yeah, I mean, like none of them were like super tearful, like fodder for a TV program, but
Yeah.
people are happy to see one another. It's always nice.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting that you mentioned like in terms of being fodder for a TV program, what I find interesting about those like the actual telethon footage that they're using is yeah, they are doing a service of reuniting families who were separated by the Korean War, but then it's also very much a reality TV production.
Yeah,
They are making sure to say like, oh, describe what your brother looks like. Okay, now cut to him and like pull him into the screen. Like they really want the viewers to be hooked
yeah.
into this kind of emotional orgy of feeling that is just like ongoing, ongoing. They're running it 24/7.
Yeah, and that when you think about how that happens today, when you see like people on talk shows and teary scenes when they're given a check or they're given a car or something, like um, a lot of that is like it's it's not decided on who has the biggest need. It's like their producers interview people over Zoom and see who's most likely to cry on air because that's what they want. They want
Yeah, that
someone who's
is
going to get emotional on air. Like if they talk to someone, they're just like, "Yep, I've had a terrible life. My son died and my other kid has cancer." They're gonna be like, "This guy's boring. We're not gonna put him on TV. You don't get no check." It's
yeah,
all
you're right.
about like they want that emotional experience on television.
They do, hence the auditions. And yeah, I read, so I haven't at all read the whole thing, but I found out there was a guy, Chung Soon Kim. He wrote in 1988 this ethnography called Faithful Endurance, an ethnography of Korean family dispersal. And part of it was about this KBS reunion telethon, and he talked a little about from the excerpts that I've read about how they would find families that were really going to be a huge emotional hit for the reunification,
Mm.
give them maybe 15 minutes of airtime, while they would often reduce people who were searching, 10 to
Mhm.
15 seconds to quickly state their case of like, here's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
So there was a lot of visual and audio real estate given to whoever they thought would be the great performers.
yeah. Yeah, and you see those scenes of all the people like lined up outside the studio. Like it wasn't just like you wrote a letter to, Steve Harvey or whatever. Like you people were out there for like months at a time with signs like trying to get attention, trying to get on the show or trying to just even like it became a place that not just on the show, but like people would gather outside and like read each other's signs and try and find each other. But I mean, the reason there were the split screens on the show is because like every city had this same production going on, and they'd be like, let's cut to Daegu, let's cut to Seoul, let's cut to Busan, because not everyone could travel across the country, and like maybe one family member showed up in one side of the country and one family member showed up in the other, and they have their little databases and they're trying to figure out who's where and who could possibly be related to who.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and talk about a perfect use of the split screen there, like having that technology specifically for those moments and being able to show people reuniting across vast different, or I guess from different station locations is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, now there was DNA in the film, but it was a much more like complicated process. Like even if you watch the film Memories of Murder, they talk about doing DNA and they have to like send it to America and wait 2 weeks for it to come back. Like it's a
Oh yeah,
much more difficult
love that
like
movie.
if that were happening now, like they'd just be like, yeah, everybody take a 23andMe test. It'll be fine. Like we don't need to wait outside TV stations for months at a time. Just swab your cheek. We're good.
Well, that's why, to go back to what you said earlier, that's what's so wild about it is that you're you're trying to figure out each other's identities based upon things like sense memory to say like, okay, I lived near this river and these were the smells I could smell. These were people that also lived here. Is that
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, and like if when you think about this now, it seems like how could you lose track of your entire family? Like nowadays, we have the technology. Like just check the GPS. You're fine. But like
Oh yeah,
back
find my
then,
phone.
yeah, like people didn't have phones. People didn't have any sort of. A lot of people didn't have IDs. Like um, just war blew up entire towns. People lost homes and like people were traveling around to try and like find safety, and like it just, if that connection was separated, how do you get it back? There's no way to figure out, you have to be like a detective and go like travel down and ask people like, did you see where she went? But then in traveling, you're risking your life again. You're losing more connections by traveling to get that information. And as we saw in the movie, like horrible things can happen at every step of trying to find out where the people you love are. And you get thrown into more and more situations. You can be forced into like labor. You can be forced into being a soldier. You can be injured. You can be put in the hospital. Like it really was, if you went down the street to get groceries and something happened, like you might never see your family again and not know if they're alive or dead.
Oh yeah, you're right. And that you might get trapped above the 38th parallel, and then your family's below, and then you can't see each other.
Yeah.
And you're right. Yeah, they in attempting to reconnect, especially when they're going to the flashbacks, that often creates more disconnections. Like,
Yeah.
especially when she is like, "I'm gonna leave my baby boy behind, and I'm gonna go try and find him," and they end up missing each other, and then that also creates this effect of like, okay, he grows up a really hard life.
Yeah. Like you don't have a phone, and if you send a letter, it ain't getting nowhere because there's a war. So
Yeah,
like literally, like there's a scene in the movie where they just like, she goes to him and he goes to her, then they switch and he goes back and she goes back, and like it's impossible to know where anyone is or where they're going.
yeah. That's something that I've often thought about, and like this will obviously go off track a little bit, but anytime I've thought about like living in like the 19th century, to where someone says, "I'm going to go out west, set up shop, and I'll send for you," and I think, okay, that could just be a see you never type situation again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. How are you sure any of that's going to work out? Like if someone
yeah,
dies on the trail, you'll just never find out.
yeah. That's that's my thinking on it.
Yeah. Or if a
Um,
letter gets lost in the mail, like, hey, it's not like I can just go west and see you. Like there's a lot of stuff in between. I don't know which little tiny town you're in.
yeah, a ton of obstacles.
Hmm.
Um, I'm curious then with this. So you talked about like it, the movie got you misty eyed, like maybe low reaction on the scale, and it's really seeing the cast come together that did it. So I'm wondering, is this like one of the was seeing the cast reunited? Is that one of like the bigger crying reactions you've had, like in relation to movies, or are there movies that go above and beyond that for you?
No, yeah, I think that was probably the most I've cried at a. Well, again, I didn't cry at the movie. I cried after the movie was over, but
Yeah,
the movie was part of that one-two punch because, like I said, those two were, either one of them would have gotten me to cry, but the two of them together in that order really did a number on the entire audience.
yeah, you're right. You needed the context of the movie to be able to connect with the cast having that reaction.
Mhm. And and again with the seeing the cast reaction, you have the knowledge of, oh, he's not actually a dick. He's a nice boy who is acting.
I know,
So
yeah,
they're
that
all nice. I don't have to
yeah.
be upset with anybody.
Yeah, I always fall prey to that too. Like when I see an actor play an asshole or a bully or something, I immediately kind of associate with them with that. But then I do understand on some level, yes, they're acting.
Yeah.
So then that was 2016. That was weirdly 10 years ago now. Um, have you had like a good cry since?
Um, I don't know that I have really. No, I just get really excited about everything.
Okay, I was going to say, is there anything I can do to push you to tears right now?
Uh, I don't know. Simba doesn't work anymore. I don't know. Have Spider Man tell me that that's all he has to give, and maybe no, no, I don't
Oh,
know.
sure. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that seeing the remake of Lion King like completely reset you on your original reaction to it.
Yeah, it's just the remake is so weird, and that like let's do the same movie but take out any emotional connection to anything. Um,
Yeah.
let's just have every character look like a taxidermied lion constantly, making no facial expressions. Which is great. They look like lions, but I'm not going to emotionally connect to their story.
I know, yeah. I didn't end up seeing that, but I know what you're talking about. They kind of like had that uncanny real look to them.
Yeah.
to where they tried to make all of the animals, I guess, look hyper realistic, and in doing
Yeah.
so, you lost that little spark uh,
Hmm.
that animated the first one.
Yeah, you also can't tell what character is which because they all just look like lions. I'm like, which one is
Whoa, I hadn't
Scar?
considered that.
Yeah, like Scar and Mufasa are just like two lions, and I'm like, wait, which one's Scar? Which one's Mufasa?
Whoa, that is something that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of now intrigued to see it just to see if I can tell them apart.
It's
I don't know if
bad.
I'll actually make the leap, but yeah, yeah. I actually I might hold off.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um, one other thing I'd like to ask is, I know that you make comics and you're really into storytelling. What's your relationship with movies?
I mean, I've always loved movies. I mean, I'd love to write a movie, but it's a much bigger, more expensive proposition. I love comics because I can sit down in an afternoon, make a comic, have it on the internet, people can see it. But movies, I love uh movies. I've always like I said, I always go to the Busan Film Festival. I used to travel a lot more to go to film festivals and try and see like really obscure movies you can't see anywhere else. I love living in Busan. We have the Busan Cinema Center, which is where the film festival takes place, and they have like a big archive of films that have shown there. You can watch anytime for free. Short films, like obscure films
Wow.
from different countries that have like never played in theaters. Um, I also love seeing all like every single blockbuster and everything. I love seeing as many different types of movies as I can, and trying to dig into ones that no one's ever seen before and like really obscure stuff. Yeah, I absolutely love movies.
Um, if you is that something that you've given like a lot of thought to? Like if you were gonna write your own movie, what it would be about?
Yeah, I mean, I've a lot of the things like when I come up with stories, I'm like, what's the best form for this? I often end up making them graphic novels because that's what I have access to. But like, um, there are a few things that like, I'd love to see movie adaptations of some of my comics. There have been talks, but nothing's come through yet. But like, one of the things I was thinking about making on my own is there's a uh, comic I did called Samyan John that's about this homeless guy in Korea that I became friends with, and we road tripped across the country to reunite him with his father. It's kind of his adopted father that was like in a mental institution, and he hadn't seen him in uh, probably 40 years, like this film. I kind of did this in real life where I was trying to reunite them, and then we got all the way across the country, and they wouldn't let him see him because they said you're not his real son, and it was a whole big dramatic thing. But it was also like he was a really weird eccentric guy, and so I made a comic about it, and I realized it'd be a very simple movie to make if you just cast two actors and do the same road trip. I've thought about that, um, but I've been so busy making comics I haven't gotten into it.
Interesting. So another story of reunification.
Hmm.
I think it could work.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a like people love that comic just because that guy's such a weirdo. He's this Korean guy who hates Koreans because he has such a difficult life, and all the things that were done to him were done by Koreans. And I'm like, yeah, but it's because you live in Korea, man. Like that's who happened to be there. I'm sorry. And so he lives in a subway station, would only talk to foreigners and help foreigners. Like if you'd see him and he'd be like, "Hey, what do you need? I'll give you directions. I'll take you to all the best restaurants or whatever you need to find." Because he like that was the only connection he had. He loved talking to foreigners, and so um, very eccentric guy that I got to have a nice road trip with. And I actually was making a movie about the road trip, and then I lost all the footage, so I made it a comic instead.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
and
And
then
remind me, what is this comic called again?
Samyan John, it's on my website for free.
It's on your website for free. And what is your
Yep,
website?
RyanEstrada.com. There's thousands of pages of stuff there you can read.
Oh, perfect. Any plans to, I don't know, return to the movie format?
Um, yeah, I don't have any plans. Like I have agents trying to get adaptations of my work made, and like I said, we've had a few starts and stops, and a a show that was canceled because I gently suggested casting an Asian actor to play an Asian character, and the studio got so mad they canceled it. Um,
Ah,
but a lot of it has just been like, there was something that would almost happen, but then the writer strike happened and the actor strike happened, and it kind of fell apart. But hopefully, we'll get something made someday. Whether it's something I'm involved with or it's just something like I would just love to watch a movie based on something I made and see how it changes and what another creator does with the story.
I imagine that would be a very cool experience to see your work adapted.
Yeah, like there are a lot of people are so sensitive about it and like would or like I don't know if I could trust them. And I'm like, if someone makes a good movie based on my work, great, I get to see a good movie. If someone makes a movie that sucks, people will be like the book was better. Also great for me. Who cares?
True,
My version exists.
that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, yeah. You can always just tell people to check out the original source material.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Not Crying is a production of Wildborough Studio. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.